Welcome to the No Filter Weekly for episode number 8. Episode number 8, almost up to number 10, almost up to double digits. And with me, as always, is my trusty companion, Shay Namdarian. How's it going, Shay?
Hey, Steve. Yeah, I'm good. It's we've busted this out for about 2 months now. It's pretty nuts. Time does fly, but yeah, I actually enjoy these chats with you. It's kind of like just chatting with a mate and just kind of see where the conversation goes. It's awesome.
I think that's all we're doing here. And I think in this time of lockdown, any form of human interaction, be it face-to-face or more likely over the screen, through a screen, is very much welcome. So hopefully people out there enjoy our random meanderings. I always start the show off with a word that doesn't quite make sense, but nonetheless, we kick on regardless. So I followed in your footsteps and got myself a DIY haircut.
Oh yeah, here we go.
So it's still long. However, the actual sides, so I did the short sides and back by myself, literally just with the clippers in the bathroom mirror.
It's very hard to kind of judge. If you're using the clippers with the mirror behind, it's actually very hard to judge where your hand is because it's like obviously not something you're used to. But how many goes did you take? Did you take it easy initially, like with a bit more leeway, and then you kind of went with the clippers that were a bit finer?
Yeah. I think that's the strategy. So start off with something like number 2 or even number 3, so you get a feel for it. And then after a while, you'll find that you go from really gentle to really aggressive, and you start pushing into your scalp. And look, there were some longer hairs that came out, so I must have pushed up a little bit too high in some circumstances, but some instances. But nonetheless, I'm reasonably happy with the results. I've got 20 minutes.
It's not bad. Well, that's the thing, right? You'd go to a barber and probably spend $30, $40, just do it yourself. But I guess for me, I'd still go back to barbers when they open up again, just because of that. I like, just the experience and stuff. Of
course. And, I mean, there's a lot of things where you could do them for free, but you don't, because to do so would discount the experience that comes with it. I mean, for example, coffee, right? So I've literally got like pretty much every contraption you can think of when it comes to brewing coffee at home. Espresso machine, French press, the filter coffee contraption, the little funnels with the filter paper, all that sort of stuff. I've got a coffee grinder, you name it, all sorts of manner of beans. But I always enjoy taking a walk down to the local cafe mid-morning, have a chat with the barista, get a coffee. It breaks up the day in a way that just walking over to the kitchen doesn't, I find.
Yeah. I've kind of gone down the coffee making rabbit hole at home. So I've got an AeroPress, which is it's pretty nifty device. It's probably about $50. Takes you a couple of minutes to make your own coffee. I'm waiting for a handheld grinder as well. So I ordered one online, waiting for that to arrive. So I think for me, like I like to have probably 2 coffees a day, or max 2 coffees, and this way I make one myself, and I find it kind of therapeutic, right? Just kind of going through that process and making it, and I don't know, appreciate the beans a little bit more, and the type of beans that I buy and stuff like that.
Well, speaking of beans,
there you go.
Speaking of beans, recently found out that you can get like quality beans at, of all places, Coles and Woolies.
Oh, yeah.
There's a number of brands that have gotten into that market, and literally they cost between $5 and $10 a bag, which
is that a 250 gram bag or something? Or
250 gram bag, which is quite favorable compared to, say, paying 15 to 25 in some cases at some of the cafes around Melbourne.
Yeah, these cafes are getting hit hard, right? Because obviously they can't do as much business as they normally do, so they've gone down the other parts of trying to sell coffee beans, and then you've got these players like supermarkets, Woolworths, Coles, who are bringing out their own beans that look somewhat similar in terms of branding and stuff of these fancier ones, but they're charging a fraction of the price.
Yeah,
right?
So for those of you on the YouTube, you can see the beans on the screen. This DC Coffee, this is the actual brand that you can get in Coles. And I mean, look at the branding. It's like super cool.
Yeah.
And the coffee, from what I could tell, I'm not a coffee connoisseur, so to speak. At least I don't consider myself one. Tasted just as good as the $25 Market Lane beans you get, or even Padre and all these other sort of more prominent coffee bean brands around Melbourne.
Nice one. So I think, you're right. I'm one of those people where it's a balance for me. I'm glad I've had the experience of being able to start making stuff at home and kind of getting into that coffee rabbit hole. But I still on the weekends love to just go for a walk, grab a coffee. And I think hopefully in Melbourne, we can, when it gets towards summer, there'll be a lot more outdoor dining from the sounds of things. So we can, have our brunches outdoors in the sun.
Yeah.
Dreams are free, right? That's what they say.
100%. And it just makes me wonder, like, what else falls into this category of paying for the experience when you can get it at home. And I think going out to the cinemas is one of those things as well, where people for so long have been saying, oh, cinemas are dying, and perhaps they are to some degree. But at the same time, every now and again, it's nice to actually make your way out to the local theaters, spend $50 or whatever just on the popcorn. And it's a different experience to just sitting on the couch and watching Netflix for the 7,000th time.
It's a very, very good point. No, I am looking forward to hopefully going back to the cinema one day, but it hasn't been a big loss in my life, but it's a thing nice to do kind of thing every now and again.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned this whole news around more outdoor dining in Melbourne. So for those listeners who aren't from Melbourne, what you're referring to there is this news that that will be one of the first types of dining that we'll be able to venture back to once lockdown ends, as opposed to dining indoors, because apparently it's less risky. Now, I forgot who it was, but I believe it was a journalist for The Age who said, oh, this is against the ethos of Melburnians.
I read that article as well. I think I read it this morning. It was out of control.
But I think there was a lot of pushback, because I think Melburnians love to eat outdoors, and yes, we have fine dining and places that require you to eat inside, but during the summer and spring, man, there's nothing better than being outside, outdoors. Right?
What? Because he was essentially saying that we love eating food indoors, and the experience is different if you have your food outside. It's going to go cold, or it's going to get disgusting, or whatever it might be. And he was like, we want to eat inside. That's what we do in Melbourne. We're not like New York. So my sister lives in New York, and she's just like, things are pretty normal. Everything just happens outside now. People just eat outside, have meals outside of restaurants. Whereas he was pretty much saying, we're not New York. We don't want to be like New York. But it was just, it was it was an interesting piece, to say the least.
Yeah. No, look, I am all for eating outdoors. I think at this point, after more or less 7 or 8 months of no restaurants, any restaurant, it could be in a basement of a car park. I'm there. I look forward to that experience. So we've already jumped into a few news stories, but let's get into the No Filter Weekly Official. First up, have you caught the Social Dilemma on Netflix? Speaking of sitting on your couch watching Netflix.
I saw a bit of it actually on the weekend. I haven't finished it, but I was happy with the content of what they were trying to get across, and a couple of things actually surprised me from what I saw. But it was a really I think it's probably going to open a lot of people's eyes to how these companies like your Facebooks, Googles, Twitters, so forth, how they all work and how they operate, and how they, I guess one of their main goals is to get as many people on their platform and for as long as possible as well. One thing that stood out to me, so I'm not on social media much. I try to avoid it as much as possible. So I rarely even use Facebook anymore. And I might dabble in Twitter here and there, but LinkedIn's probably the main thing I use.
How has your life changed since jumping off social media? Because I know at one point you were running Barnaby, a sock, what would you call it? A sock brand, essentially? Men's fashion brand. That's a better way of putting it. And you are obviously spending a lot of time on Instagram back then. I know you used to spend more time on Facebook. In what way has your life changed since taking the foot off the pedal completely?
During those times, I'd be on social media quite a bit, just because focus more on the brand. So I'd look at, the mentions of the brand, who's talking about it, retweeting stuff. So I'd really be on top of it a lot of the time throughout the day. I'd never really been a big social media user from a personal point of view, but I'd always been on Facebook. I'd reply to people, that kind of stuff. But now I don't even use Facebook. Like I said, don't use anything. I've never really gone on Instagram from a personal point of view. In terms of how my life has changed, I think it's hard to kind of say it's better or worse, but I just, the feeling of not having to worry about what people are doing on there. And I get texts from friends every now and again with a screenshot from Twitter or screenshot from Instagram saying, hey, look what this person said or whatever. And I'm like, it's so weird getting like news that way when I'm not actually on the platform. So it shows you how people share things and they want other people to know about it if they're not on the platform. But in terms of my life, I reckon I'm super happy not being on there. I think I hear some of the stories from friends and people that I know about, oh, did you hear what this person posted? Oh, they're so annoying. Like you hear these stories. It's just like, I don't want to hear about that. I'm just happy to live my life and not really focus too much on what's happening on social media. And as we know, what people post on social media is not their real life.
Of course.
And that's obviously how they want it to come across. Like that's their life 24/7. But
I guess one thing that you probably, not necessarily not across, but you don't know what the counterfactual would be. Like if you were spending time on social media now, like if you were, you're probably just going to be in a place where you're reaching for your phone every 10 minutes. You're going to struggle to focus on getting work done. Plus, it's easy to fill your mind with a lot of junk that, nowadays you see increasingly greater numbers of people becoming associated with like, Black Lives Matter or they're super pro-Trump or whatever the case is. And it's because they spend so much time on Twitter getting immersed in all these Twitter wars and taking things personally. And it's so easy for that to snowball and for you to start to identify very closely with these things and spend so much time going down Twitter rabbit holes at the expense of everything else going on in your life or not going on in your life.
Endless scrolling, right? Just like clicking, scrolling. What I do, are you kind of in and out of social media?
More or less. I mean, obviously with no filter, trying to build this brand, we post a lot to social media, even with my stuff around, say, Time Rich, my books and whatnot. I think a rule that I try to stick to as much as I can is I post stuff and that's it. Now, sometimes I find myself being pulled back in to say, oh, I wonder how well that post did. Now, you've got to do that to a certain degree to know what works, what doesn't, or get a gauge for it. But at the same time, I don't need to jump in every 5 minutes to do that. Like I could post something and check how it performed a week later in bulk. I can see how did all my posts go, what did well, what didn't, rather than just being, picking up your phone every 5 minutes, because that's no way to live, especially nowadays with like people's average screen time just on their phones being about 5 hours or 5 hours a day, 10 weeks a year, which is why I think this movie is encouraging. There's been countless books in the past few years that have come out on this topic. Irresistible by Adam Alter, an Aussie over at, I believe he's at the Stern School of Business at NYU. Nia Ayal's Hooked, Cal Newport, Deep Work, Digital Minimalism. All these books tackle this issue. But the thing about books is only so many people really read books. In terms of getting to the mass market, the mainstream audience, there's no better vehicle than Netflix, I think. So really encouraging to see them shine a light on the fact that not only are these tools engineered in a way whereby it's all about getting you hooked and spending as much time on the platform so that they can sell ads, but also what I was saying earlier, like you can start to fill your mind with junk that becomes who you are, and then you start to just make really, really bad decisions that pervade every aspect of your life. So
you get a lot. I know a few people that have seen this this movie and are just like, I'm never using my phone again. I'm never jumping on social media. And then like a day later, they're just dominating social media again. I think the problem with these kind of things is people watch them, they get outraged. They're like, I don't want to live this kind of life. This is crazy. And then nothing really changes in their lives, which is the case with a lot of things. And it's hopefully I'm sure their mission or aim is if it impacts a few people, then obviously it's served its purpose. But there's a lot of people that want to change but won't.
Yeah, and I mean the film features quite a few former tech executives, including Tristan Harris, who was Google's design ethicist before founding his own company that's all about getting people unhooked. It includes Sean Parker, the former co-founder of Napster and former Facebook executive, and numerous others, even the guy who invented the like button on Facebook. And they're all basically speaking out against Facebook. They've all left the company. They all don't let their kids use it because they know just how toxic it can be. And to your point about people actually making changes in their lives, that's one thing that I feel the film didn't quite do well. Like it kind of raised awareness, and maybe that's what their goal was, around the issue, but didn't really provide people with too much actionable advice. So fortunately, I wrote an article about it, and here's 6 quick tips to actually get yourself unhooked. One simple one is just turning off the notifications on your phone and on your desktop. 2, using a browser, a search engine rather, like DuckDuckGo instead of Google, because that allows you to search anonymously, so you're not being served up ads and everything else that's going to compel you to click. 3, put some distance between yourself and your phone. So if you find yourself reaching for your phone every 5 seconds, put it in another room. It's going to be much harder to reach it if it's beyond arm's reach. 4, check your screen time. You know, I find it's always scary if you check your screen time and you're spending 4 hours a day on your phone. That's 8 weeks a year. Where else could you be investing that time? Learning things, getting closer to your goals, spending time with loved ones. 5, remove YouTube recommendations. You can download a Chrome plugin to do that so that you're not constantly going down these YouTube rabbit holes and just seeing more of the same kind of content, which makes you believe more of the same thing. And finally, you can block sites with tools like BlockSite or the Freedom app for certain periods of time throughout the day. So you can block email, social media, and just free your mind to focus on whatever you need to get done.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think I definitely have to look at the YouTube one you mentioned. I do somehow just kind of, keep getting forced the same kind of stuff on YouTube. So it'd be good to kind of wipe that clean a little bit. The other thing around the show was, from what I remember seeing at the first, I think it's the first quarter of the show, first half, was obviously how these brands and these companies try to draw you in and bring you back into the platform so that you get on there and maybe spend more time than you initially wanted to on there. So what I've noticed with LinkedIn, so I use LinkedIn because of work purposes, and every time I get a LinkedIn inbox message, I'll get an email saying, "Hey, you've got a LinkedIn inbox message," right? I click on that email and it's like, I want to read the message in the email. I don't want to go onto LinkedIn, but it's got a button there saying view message, and you got to click it and it takes you through to LinkedIn. And obviously it's frustrating for me as a user, but they've obviously got their reasons for doing it. They want me to get onto LinkedIn and just start scrolling through, see what people are talking about, and spend a bit more time on there. So it's interesting. It's not just Facebook. It's not just Instagram. It's LinkedIn. Every platform's doing it.
Yeah. One of the cast members in The Social Dilemma actually alludes to that when he says, you'll receive an email from Facebook saying you've been tagged in this photo.
Yeah.
Why isn't the photo in the email?
Show me the photo. Right? Yeah.
Just show me the photo. Like, they make me click and go back into Facebook. But then you have other like so-called news websites where it's 10 top 10 highest earning musicians of all time, right? And you'll click in hoping to just get the quick list, but it'll be like a gallery and it'll show you number 10 and you got to go to the next page for number 9, number 8. You can literally spend like half an hour just refreshing your page just to get that list.
The lowest.
And ultimately, but it's designed that way to keep people on their platforms and serve more ads.
Yeah. And the thing you want to see is always number 1, right? Just like they're just dragging you there.
To get to number 1.
So good.
Yeah. Oh, man. Look, to be honest, I did think about doing that on our No Filter website at one point, but I thought I'd spare our audience. I think we want to have a little bit more integrity when it comes to our journalistic ethos.
You're a better person than a lot of other people out there.
At least I try to be every now and again. But speaking of Netflix, we've kind of been going down this Netflix rabbit hole in the first 20 minutes of this show. Another show that's been making headlines in the past couple of weeks has been the French movie Cuties, which essentially has attracted a lot of critiques from people on the right who purport that it sexualizes young girls as young as 11 years old, and it essentially takes an inside look at the life of an 11-year-old Senegalese girl from Paris who dreams of pursuing a career in dance, but she is an Islamic girl, she's a Muslim, and her parents are her mum is against this, and it goes against the culture that she's been brought up in. Have you seen Cuties as yet, Shay? Or
no, I haven't seen it, but I think I briefly saw a bit of the trailer, and I've seen a lot of. I know there's a big hashtag cancel Netflix online, and I think there's a petition out there as well where we're talking like close to 1 million people might have signed it by now. Just can't. They want to cancel Netflix completely and just get it off.
Well,
get it off.
It's interesting because like for the people listening on YouTube, the actual film poster that was proposed by the film creators was essentially the girls in the city streets of Paris, going shopping, throwing stuff in the air, looking really jubilant. And you can see that on the YouTube if you're watching online. But the poster that Netflix actually used was one they created themselves, which was this one here, which is a lot more sexualized. It's like something that you might expect to see in a hip hop video, except these are 11-year-old girls posing in very suggestive positions. So I can see why this would have caused a bit of uproar. But at the same time, I mean, what the director, and I'm probably going to mispronounce his name, Maimouna Donkwa, was trying to do was to raise awareness that this type of stuff goes on, that there is sexualization of young girls, that social media is pulling girls into this world where they feel the need to, take selfies or record dance videos and, pose in all sort of skimpily clad clothing. That is a real issue. And, if we turn a blind eye to this stuff and cancel movies like this and pretend it doesn't happen, I mean, that doesn't make the problem go away.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you've seen the movie, right, Steve?
Yeah, I saw it on the weekend.
How'd you find it? Was it actually a good movie?
I think it was a great movie. I mean, it looked at so many different themes. The culture that the young girl Amy or Ami was brought up in, the tradition and kind of the juxtaposition of being a Muslim girl growing up in Paris in the West, and how the two different sets of values kind of conflicting. The social media rabbit hole, these girls looking to just get as many likes as possible. They'll post something, if it doesn't work, they repost it. The sexualization piece, like so this girl would effectively watch hip hop videos. So there's this funny scene where she's at this Islamic sort of, I don't know what to call it, like a get together, and they're all praying. And she's got her hijab on and she's hiding behind it. And she's watching these hip hop videos of girls twerking and getting inspiration. And then she started to use that on stage. But seeing that was it was really confronting and kind of, it was difficult to watch because these are 11-year-old girls doing what you would expect, say, Nicki Minaj to do. Yeah. And there's this one scene which was quite disturbing where this group of girls broke into a laser tag complex, and security found them, and there was this really creepy looking security guard who would not let them go. But one of the girls started dancing in a very suggestive way, and he looked at her in a very disturbing way. And fortunately, there was another security guard on the scene who said, "Girls, get the hell out of here." And he's like, "What the hell are you doing, man?" So it's
very confronting from the
very confronting. And while I'm all for shining a light on these things and doing something about it, which I think the director definitely raised awareness of these issues, at the same time, it makes you wonder who's going to watch this and actually go down the other rabbit hole and maybe be inspired to look at stuff that they've never looked at before. It's pretty disturbing in that way. But when people talk about the film poster and it sexualizing girls, I think what we miss out on is the context. So it's a poster. You've got to watch the film to really appreciate what it's trying to say. This move to just cancel everything, like you said, you saw the Netflix, cancel Netflix hashtag making the rounds. As soon as something doesn't quite fit our worldview, it's let's cancel this. Whether you're on the left or the right, J.K. Rowling, Joe Rogan, Chris D'Elia, Cuties, let's just cancel everything. That's not going to achieve anything. Let's put stuff out there and let people decide what they think is worth watching.
Yeah, and I know with Netflix, anyway, given this uproar around Cuties, I think comparing August to September, the daily kind of churn rate in September is 8 times higher than it was in August because of Cuties and all the uproar around it. So they're actually losing something along those lines. If you can check it up online, but they're actually losing customers given what's been going on with Cuties. I actually thought potentially it's obviously some people say any press is good press, but I guess in this instance it sounds like they're actually losing customers. So there is that impact. So maybe they are regretting that poster choice from the sounds of things.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. So I've just brought up an article from Variety magazine, which says that Cuties backlash led Netflix US cancellations, to spike 8-fold. But what does that actually mean in terms of hard numbers? Because I imagine the cancellation numbers are quite low. So
you've got to also think about it from the point of view where, given everyone's been in lockdown, they probably had skyrocketed numbers signing up over the last few months. It's probably some of those people that are just canceling their 1 month subscriptions after it turns into a paid subscription. Who knows? But I'm sure there's other factors involved as well. But they're attributing it to the uproar around Cuties.
And that's also one of those things where, we talked about science and how it can be gamed last week, correlation and causation. There's probably numerous reasons for cancellations, one of which being the fact that there's so many other credible streaming players nowadays, whether it's Disney Plus, Apple TV, Amazon Prime, Prime TV, even YouTube Premium. And YouTube Premium is not great, but there's so many other alternatives that may lead to people canceling their subscriptions, including perhaps political reasons and wanting to make a point, which good on him. I think rather than just saying something, putting your money where your mouth is and taking action is a far better way to try and inform change than just talking about it.
Well, Netflix has done some good recently when they took over. They bought Cobra Kai right off YouTube, so that was definitely a good thing. I'm sure that increased their number of users, and I'm pretty sure it's been a massive hit for Netflix since they got it off YouTube.
Yeah, I think it's the number one trending TV show in Netflix in the United States at the moment, Cobra Kai. So, to turn an angle and go from talking about a film which essentially touches on pedophilia to something a little bit more upbeat. Cobra Kai, I saw both season 1 and 2 when it was on YouTube, so I'm an OG, but I know you got on board once it made the move to Netflix and you've just finished watching it. How did you find Cobra Kai?
Well, for anyone probably listening, there might be some spoilers coming up, so probably want to cover your ears, but honestly, you'd obviously talked about it for a long time, and I never really got a chance to watch it just because it was probably that barrier of entry. Like, I didn't want to go on YouTube, sign up and watch it on YouTube. And now that it's on Netflix, I'm sure there's many people out there like me who are, it's on Netflix. Yeah, cool. Let's watch it because I've already got a Netflix subscription. So I started watching it, and it's really for a show that kind of a movie that was based 35 years ago, and for them to turn it into a series with the same actors, the main actors from that movie 35 years ago, has been super impressive. It's one of those shows where it's funny, it keeps you on the edge of your seat. They leave the cliffhangers every episode, so you want to watch the next one. They're only half an hour episodes, so each season's only got 10. But I was pretty hooked after 1 or 2 episodes, and it's one of and that's a problem with binging, right? You've got all the episodes there, you just want to watch it all, and after I watched the very last episode of season 2, it's kind of I'm sure you probably had it as well, but it's kind of like that empty feeling. You're like, oh shit, what's next? And for me, I've just finished watching it. I know the next season's probably coming in
2021.
Hopefully early 2021, right? Whereas for you, you've been waiting fucking a year or plus or whatever, waiting to see what happens season 3. I can't imagine what that's like.
It's been intense, man. Season 2 finished on YouTube late last year. I think it was November. So it's going to be over a full year waiting for season 3. Now, look, fortunately, I've got other things in my life, so it's not so bad. But at the same time, I was super pumped for season 3 when season 2 came to a close, and now it's just it's ages. And you're absolutely right though. That feeling, that dejected feeling you get after
terrible, man.
You've watched. I've had that with maybe Entourage. I definitely had that. Vikings, I had that feeling. Now Cobra Kai as well. Apart from that, nothing else. Maybe Seinfeld, and that's going way back to the late 90s, early 2000s when the last episode occurred.
I think it's the cliffhanger part of it as well, obviously. That, I think in season 2, like I said, maybe some spoilers coming up, but in season 2 when they kind of really build up that season, a lot of anger, a lot of people hating each other, and they kind of just it simmers, but it continues to boil over. And then that last I actually had to watch that last episode twice. There's the fight
big
scene in the last episode. That's the school riot or whatever you want to call it. That was it was so random and so unbelievable. Like this would never happen in real life. But it just captivating. I just could not stop watching. And like they left the cliffhangers at the end. No, I think they did a really good job of it. I think when I was looked at IMDb, that last episode had like a rating of 9.5 on IMDb. So it obviously has done, like, obviously the fans seem to enjoy it. It's either extreme like or extreme not like, but I think generally it's pretty. Look at those numbers on the screen there. What is it?
Huge. 90, so this is Rotten Tomatoes. The critic meter is 94%. The audience score is 93%. So it's good when both the critics and the audience think it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And I think I actually think they've done really well. Let's just say the acting's probably not the best, right? But you kind of accept that as a viewer. But I think they've done the casting's done pretty well. Like the people they've chosen for the specific roles.
I love the way they just meshed like themes from the Karate Kid, like the soundtrack from the Karate Kid, some of the scenes that played out in the Karate Kid with 2020 or 2019 when they made this. Like you brought in social media and 35 years later, but it just seems so seamless the way they've picked up the story and kept running with it. And rather than something that could have been really cheesy, like they've actually made the story about Johnny and sort of his redemption arc and how he had all these demons and challenges growing up. So while he came across like a bully in the Karate Kid, like we never really looked at the world through his lens. And if you did, you'd probably see Daniel LaRusso as the bully who came from the other side of the country and stole his girlfriend and was just making a nuisance of himself all the time.
I think Johnny's what people view him as, he's kind of like an anti-hero, right? Where like I remember that scene when he was sitting down with Miguel and he was telling him the story of, just like you said, Daniel LaRusso and through his eyes and his view, and he's just like, he was such a bully, like this happened, and he was explaining the exact same scenarios that we would have seen through the movie, but through his view. And it was like, oh, maybe he's got a point there. Maybe Daniel was the instigator or the bully in some of this stuff. It's just really fascinating the way they've kind of flipped the script a little bit.
Definitely, man. And it's funny, like he was in the mid to late 80s. I think he played that bully role in a few films. One of the other ones was Just One of the Guys. And he just had that look about him. Like he was the perfect 1986 bully. I mean, look at that head. Look at that hair. He couldn't have cast a better bully. But look, things aren't always as they seem. As we found, he was also just a kid trying to find his identity, trying to find his way in the world. And I'm glad that 36 years later, he's finally doing so in Cobra Kai.
They've done well. Hopefully it goes on for a few more seasons.
And I understand, speaking of yacht rock and exploring new music, Cobra Kai has turned you on to some of the sounds of the 80s metal.
It's good. It's it's been exposed to me obviously to some 80s rock, 80s metal, and it's got me kind of transferring that to listening to it on, say, Apple Music as well. So it's been good. I actually like I said, they've done really well when it comes to the casting, the script, the story, the music to kind of add to it. I think they've done a really solid job of bringing it all together.
Fantastic. Well, let's turn the page from looking at movies and, well, not just entertainment, but looking at movies and film, and let's jump into the world of sports and sports entertainment and the NBA, which is a topic we like to revisit pretty much every week here on the No Filter Weekly. And some comments that were made by analyst Stephen A. Smith last week. And this was on the back of Steve Nash, former 2 times NBA MVP, one of my favorite players given my affinity for the Phoenix Suns, being awarded the head coaching role at the Brooklyn Nets. And Stephen A. Smith basically said, and I'm looking for the quote here, but essentially...
White privilege?
That's what it was, but I'm just looking for the exact quote. Here we go. So here's what Stephen A. Smith said. This is one of the toughest positions I've ever had to take. Ladies and gentlemen, there's no way around this. This is white privilege. This does not happen for a black man. And I know he's been on the receiving end of lots of pushback since making that statement.
Yeah, I think Charles Barkley pushed back, and pretty much anyone and everyone was just like, he was wrong to say that. He went too far. I think a couple of days ago, they revisited it on First Take, and he didn't change his stance. He just kept kind of pushing that point. So obviously the backlash he got hasn't changed his view. But yeah, for I'm sure for most people out there, they view Steve Nash as a student or a superstar of the game who's got that knowledge, and he's one of those people that would naturally go into a coaching role. And I think there's clearly white players that are like that, and I think black players as well. I look at Chris Paul, who has been a superstar of the league for years, and he's seen as a future coach in waiting. And he's one of those people where I wouldn't be surprised once he retires, a year or two later, he'd be a head coach in the league. So it's going to happen to these kind of people. And yeah, I'm not surprised it happened to Steve Nash. And you look at Steve Kerr, for example, with the Golden State Warriors, man, he hadn't coached a day in his life.
And
he was like a GM or something, right? That's all
and he was nowhere near the player that Steve Nash was as well.
Nowhere near, right? Obviously, he had some good times.
With the supporting cast of Jordan and Pippen.
Right, the coattails of Jordan, right? But he obviously went to Golden State, and he brought him like 3 championships in 5 years. Like they're in the finals 5 years in a row. And no one ever talked about him getting that role. So I think it's really important to kind of look at the bigger picture as opposed to really channeling into just one hire. Like look at what's happened in the past and base it on that.
Yeah, definitely. And Charles Barkley, you mentioned, he basically said, well, this actually does happen to black guys because it happened to Jason Kidd, it happened to Derek Fisher, it happened to Doc Rivers. So it's very sort of simplistic comment to say this doesn't happen to black guys when the evidence effectively refutes that. And we had Rick Bucher from Mad Dog Sports on the Alley Oop Show with Andrew Gaze and Leonard Copeland last week. And he said something similar as yourself. He said Steve Kerr never coached prior to winning. White privilege or not, the white dude that had never coached before did coach a team to a championship, and he isn't nearly the player that Steve Nash is. He basically echoed what Barkley said, but he basically went on to say, is it white privilege when 2 black superstars, being Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, say, that's the guy we want to coach us, in reference to Steve Nash?
Yeah. I found that really fascinating because, that's pretty much how it works. Like, because they're the superstars, they have to give the green light. They pretty much are saying who they want to come and coach them, and they're the ones that have decided they wanted Nash to coach them. So Nash is pretty much at the mercy of them, whether they accept him or not, and they want him there. So they've really got the power in this situation.
Yeah. And I guess it points to a bigger issue that's kind of playing out right now, where we kind of try and put everything into very simple black and white buckets and say, if a white person gets a job, it's because of privilege. It has nothing to do with their skill, their attitude, everything else. And, I penned an article this week called What If Steve Nash Was Black? What would Stephen A. Smith say then? Well, if you look at his accolades, like I said, 2 times MVP, 7-time All-NBA basketballer, high basketball IQ. He was a point guard, which Leonard Copeland said is basically like your coach on the court. He played 17 seasons, pretty much played the playoffs every season with Phoenix, Dallas, and the Lakers. Like, this isn't like, it's not like he was some guy who rolled along with a terrible record, played 3 seasons, and now he's been given the role.
Some chump who rode the bench his whole career. Yeah, obviously. And I'm pretty sure at Golden State, he was like a player development support or something, advisor or something. So, he obviously had a bit to do with players leading up to this appointment. He just never obviously coached a team in his career, but that's not to say he's not going to do a good job. So there'll be a lot of pressure on him to perform.
Yeah, definitely. And I was looking into the mechanics and the attributes that underpin success, and I came across some stuff by Brian Tracy, who's basically been like this motivational speaker going back like 3 or 4 decades. And he put together this list, which I think stands up in pretty much any domain, be it academia, business, sports, you name it. And, skin color aside, things like education, skill, relationships, persistence, money, mindset, character, IQ, EQ, luck, geography, assertiveness, hard work. These are all valuable attributes to get you to success. At the same time, no doubt, if you have grown up, say, in a white family in some parts of the world, perhaps you have access to more money, more relationships, better education. And that's the stuff that I think we need to address, making sure people have equal opportunities, but not necessarily equal outcomes, and just forcing people into roles because we need to meet a quota, or because we've got enough white people, or we've got too many guys, we need more girls. Like ultimately, like merit should stand tall, but we should give everyone the opportunity to develop their skills and get to those positions. And we've seen that play out with numerous Black Americans being elevated to head coaching roles in the NBA.
Yeah, it's you're right. There's quite a few of them now, and I think there's a few in line for some coaching jobs that are opened up now in the NBA as well. So I think with this stuff, with Stephen A saying that, obviously it sounds like it's his opinion, but if anything, it probably just he's probably trying to bring more people, make more people talk about what's going on. Maybe that's part of what he's the point of what he's doing is. Yeah. But yeah, so we'll see. But I think with Nash definitely deserved it, and there'll definitely be some future basketball players that are white or black that are going to go straight from playing to coaching, because like we said, Steve Kerr did it really well, and there's no truth in you have to have had 15 years of experience. It's like corporate life now, right? Like back in the day, it would have been like, if you've got 15 years of experience in a role, yeah, okay, you can have this director role at this company. Now you get like juniors who have worked for a couple of years and just gone up the ranks, boom, they're in a director role. So we're in a different world now than we were before. And I think it's not necessarily your skill set and your ability is not measured by the number of years you've done something. I don't think.
Yeah,
anyway.
No, absolutely true. And nor should it be. And I think that's one of the reasons I left the corporate world way back when. Like I remember like hustling really hard, doing what I thought was good work, at least the clients thought it was good work, and then trying to position myself for a promotion. But ultimately, all the signals that I got back were, well, you haven't been around long enough to get promoted. It's right? Like, yeah, but I'm better than half the people you've got working here. So it doesn't make any sense.
But it's a process, man. You got to follow the process.
Yeah. You got to. But and I think those processes oftentimes exist because it's too hard to treat every single person as an individual. So when you come up with simple, like tick the box processes that you can roll out across an entire organization of say 20,000 people, well, that takes all the work out of it. But at the same time, what loses out in that case is like the outcomes really. And your best people end up leaving, and you end up with people sticking around who have their positions by virtue of sticking around. Crazy. So but you're absolutely right. And I think, we touched on this earlier with the social dilemma. If you're in the media like we are, ultimately a big part of your business model might be tied up with keeping people engaged and hooked. And when you're an individual in the media, you want people to be engaged and hooked with your material. You want to be able to draw those eyeballs, because ultimately that means that you can then command higher salaries, you can negotiate better contracts. And, that's exactly what, Stephen A. Smith, I think, is doing in this case. He's someone who's very strongly spoken, has very strong convictions, doesn't care what people think. And he's going to hold, even if he thinks he's wrong, he's going to hold true to that position come hell or high water, because that's what Stephen A. Smith does. And, good luck to him, because it seems to be working for him.
Yeah.
So moving on from NBA to, I think we're going to touch on celebrities in the firing line. So this is from one of our new authors, T.C. Phillips. So he's basically written this piece on how fandom can turn toxic. So do you remember when Sonic the Hedgehog came out last year, and there was like an initial proposed outfit that Sonic was going to wear or was going to look like? And
was it the CGI stuff?
Yeah.
So I remember they came out with the trailer, right? And I watched it and I was like, this looks terrible. Like the way they did the CGI on Sonic just looked like CGI. Out of place, and he just looked like the weirdest thing ever. It looks terrible, right? And I'm pretty sure what happened was, they got a bit of backlash, and they actually stopped the release and went away and spent another like 6 to 12 months fixing up the CGI. So the Sonic looked a little bit.
So I think this is the questionable one that was touted.
It was just I remember this. So there was heaps of backlash. Everyone was just like, making fun of it. Like, this is the worst thing we've ever seen. And yeah, they actually had to go and spend, I'm sure, a crap load of money to kind of
but they did
everything
they did. And the director, I think it was Jeff Fowler, who basically responded to the criticism, jumped onto Twitter and said, look, we heard the message loud and clear. You aren't happy with the design and you want changes. It's going to happen. Everyone at Paramount and Sega are fully committed. They made changes and released the movie with the new character. And admittedly, I don't think it did that well. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but I didn't hear much about it when it did come out. I don't think you did either.
I'm pretty sure I did see Jim Carrey was in it, and it's probably the highlight of the
So that's probably a positive example of fan backlash, because that ultimately resulted in what I think was a more positive outcome, with Sonic actually looking like Sonic and not some weird alternate universe version of Sonic. But there are examples of stuff going a little bit nastier nowadays. And one example was Kelly Marie Tran, who acted in Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And she was on the subject of all sorts of racist and sexist fan commentary due to her role in a somewhat divisive film in the Star Wars franchise. She removed herself from social media. She wiped her entire Instagram presence to protect her mental health. And she basically said, it wasn't their words. It was the fact that I started to believe them. So, I mean, what do you make of people like fans just... Because we've talked about this where people kind of cancel everything, but to try and cancel someone that you're a fan of because of something they've done that you don't necessarily like, to the point where you basically destroy their lives. I mean, where do you think this comes from?
But that's... it's, I think... We've talked about it quite a bit around social media. The fact that with social media, you can say whatever you want and you don't have to front up to what you've said. No one knows who's saying it. Like, you're hiding behind some avatar online that you've put together. So I think it's just easier for people to say what they want and push things on social media. Whereas if they had to do it in person, I'm sure these people wouldn't say anything to this woman if they saw her in person.
Of course.
And I think, just people, I'm sure there's some people that just don't have enough going on in their lives and they need to kind of put effort and time into something else. And this is the kind of stuff that they do it. But when I look at like celebrities, I look at sporting people, unfortunately, it's like part and parcel of the role and what they're doing, right? They've got to have to deal with the positives and the negatives that come out of it. So if you take the AFL, for example, there's a few. I know there was a Richmond player. His name's Dylan Grimes, and he's a really good player, really good in the back, plays in the back line, really good. And what he does sometimes overplay some decisions, right? So he gets free kicks, right? Just kind of emphasizes when he's pushed or tackled or whatever it might be. And there was one incident where he was there were hands in his back and he kind of jumped forward, and that resulted in a goal being disallowed for the opposing team. And then that team ended up losing and Richmond ended up winning. Based on that, he received death threats online. So he's in Brisbane, right, as part of that AFL hub, and his family, like the people were texting him on social media saying, we know where your family lives. We're going to go after your family in Victoria, like those kind of things. So it got to a point where he just had to tell the police, and they had to go and find these people, and two of them actually got arrested, right? So I think it's just the nature of these people being in those type of roles. You're going to get that negativity and those extreme people. And where do you draw the line? So he drew the line. He just told the cops about it, and obviously these people got arrested. So it shows you that you can hide behind these accounts on social media, but some people are gonna get caught and they are gonna go to jail.
Yeah. Well, I think in that case you're also like talking about people who aren't fans of this guy because he forced their team to lose, whereas in some cases people who are fans.
That's the crazy part.
And
I find that incredible.
Yeah, and there's actually like a psychological term for it now that's alluded to in this article, and it's essentially psychologists refer to that hiding behind the screen as the online disinhibition effect. Not sure they came up with the best name for it, but basically that refers to the anonymity of cyberspace coupled with the lack of empathy which comes with the distance of screen-based communication, which ultimately makes it easy to hurl insults. And the other aspect of that is when fans actually give crap to their own, idols, is because they've made such a large emotional investment in that person or in that band or in that movie franchise, whatever it is, that when they feel they've been betrayed in some way, they can just like let loose. And, you know, I saw this happen in the early 2000s when Metallica sued Napster. And like Metallica fans, metal fans just kind of turned on the band because here's this band that's literally made by that point, you know, $1 billion, like touring the world, if not $500 million by that point. They've made 1.4 billion at this stage. You know, they've made money touring, album sales, merchandise, films, you name it. And then because some fans decided to download some songs online, which basically became par for the course, they sued Napster. And people turned on the band, people stopped supporting them. But look, like most things, give it enough time and kind of
people
forget about it. But at the time, man, like I stopped buying Metallica stuff. I just turned my back on the band. And it wasn't just that. I mean, Metallica kind of sold out and changed direction musically in the 90s. But nonetheless, that didn't help, particularly when a lot of other bands came out and used it as an opportunity to say, look at these sellouts, you know, to kind of bolster their own image amongst metalheads and say they will never sue Napster because people wanted to access their music.
Oh man, I remember the good old Napster days and all those downloading tools.
Oh yeah.
Very different world we lived in back then. But yeah, no, I find the concept of these fans actually, you know, harassing the people that they actually admire and they watch online. It's a little bit worrying, that kind of trend. See how it kind of unfolds.
Definitely is, and we will watch how it unfolds in the ensuing couple of years. But for now, I think we're going to bring this episode of the No Filter Weekly to a close. Before we do, we've launched a new podcast over the week, and that is Mick Wall's Get Your Rocks Off. You can find that over at nofilter.media/Get Your Rocks Off, as well as any place good podcasts are found. You can also find it on the No Filter YouTube channel. And that is, you know, if you are a fan, hopefully not a toxic fan of all things rock and roll, you'll join one of the world's foremost rock and roll journalists to unpack stories about all things rock and roll over the last 4 decades. So check that out. It's called Get Your Rocks Off. Shay, until next time.
Is that a weekly episode, Steve? Sorry, is that weekly or fortnightly? It's weekly, right?
It is a fortnightly show. So season 1 is 12 episodes. Fortnightly episode 1 is online right now. It unpacks tales from the Sunset Strip in the 1980s. So big hair, hairspray, spandex, all that sort of stuff.
All the good stuff, man.
All the good stuff.
Probably takes us back to our Cobra Kai days, right?
It really does. In fact, several of the songs that they talk about. So they actually talk about a song called Round and Round by Rat, which I believe featured in one of the first episodes of Cobra Kai. It may have been episode 2 or 3 in season 1. But yeah, if you like your 80s metal, Cobra Kai and Get Your Rocks Off, 2 places to get it.
Get on it. Awesome.
Awesome. We'll see you next time, Shay.
All right, see you, Steve.